I lived in the city for a long time. I lived in the city for a long time now.
Good morning and welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to welcome you to Women in Climate's first San Francisco Climate Week breakfast. I'm Jennifer Wong. I'm one of our San Francisco City Leads for Women in Climate. Thank you. As well as an LP with Women's Equity Lab, and like many of you, looking to make climate my next adventure. At Women in Climate Bay Area, we've been really active. We've had urban hikes, tree planting, wine socials, happy hours. Please see me if you'd like to help plan and organize. We have an incredible program for you today with some amazing speakers. Quick housekeeping though, if you wouldn't mind, could you all please silence your phones? Next, let's pretend this is a crowded subway. We can squeeze a few more people in, perhaps put your bags on your laps or on the floor. And then folks, we might have a couple of spots if you want to pop in. Next, we have restrooms behind and downstairs. And lastly, we have 2 fire exits. And with that, I would like to introduce you to Michelle Lee, founder of Women in Climate.
Okay, hi, Miss EJ, everyone who can sit has a seat. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and thank you, Jen, for being the MC. If there's anyone that loves Women in Climate just as much as I do in the Bay Area, it is Jen. Every room she's in, she's talking about Women in Climate, and she wears the pin everywhere she goes. There's a Women in Climate pin. I'll tell you more about it later. But really, really happy to be here. This is our first time at SF Climate Week, as Jen mentioned. How many people are in our Slack group? Okay. WhatsApp? Okay. So we have a Slack group. We also have a WhatsApp group. Our WhatsApp group is more event focused. So we have a group for SF Climate Week. So if you want to connect with other women and share best practices, like who's going to do this event or who's free to grab a coffee, that's really what that chat, the WhatsApp group is for. And let me tell you a little bit about Women in Climate. We started as a grassroots initiative back in February 2022. I essentially put a dinner on Eventbrite at a vegan restaurant for 12 women. 12 women came, surprisingly, and then I did it again. And then 12 women came again, and then we kept having these repeat people come back. And so Stephanie Corley, who is my community builder, our community builder, started hosting with us. And we were like, hee let's make Slack, and hee let's make LinkedIn. And now we're 18,000 people on our LinkedIn. We're over 4,000 people in our Slack group. And I think what Women in Climate shows is that you really don't need very much to do a lot. We can make impact with the smallest of budgets, especially when we come together and amplify each other. So since starting, we have become a very global organization. I had the opportunity to speak at Bloomberg last year on behalf of Women in Climate. We've been to COP, we've been to South by Southwest, UN General Assembly, in New York Climate Week. You have friends and community members in Doha, Dubai, Hong Kong, all over the world, in Europe and North America as well. So please join the community. If you have friends who are interested in starting in climate but maybe haven't gotten started yet, they are more than welcome to join our community. I want to give a shout out to Stephanie, who could not be here in person today, but gives our Slack community so much love. We would not be where we are today without Stephanie. So thank you for all the work that you do, Stephanie, and hello to our friends on the live stream. And if you are not in our speaker database yet, it's one of the initiatives that we have. We represent over 1,000 speakers that are women on all different topics. You don't have to be a professional speaker. We accept all levels, so you can create a free profile, head over to our website. And I also want to give a shout out to our city leads, who are almost 100 volunteers around the world that are hosting events on behalf of Women in Climate, dinners, networking events. Jen is a city lead. So if you or someone else you know wants to be city lead, please head over to the website to get started. So I'm really, really thankful to have CRES Energy support Women in Climate. Please pick up the QR code to learn a little bit more, but they're a nonprofit organization focused on Republican policymakers and making change in DC. We've got Heather, who you'll meet very shortly. I also want to thank Silicon Valley Bank for giving us this amazing, beautiful, beautiful space. Thank you so much. And with that, please welcome Heather Reams to the stage. Heather, welcome.
Hi everybody.
Heather, have you been to San Francisco before?
I've been here before, and it's been a while though, and so the city's changing and it's more beautiful than ever, really.
And this is your first SF project?
Yes, I'm thrilled to be here.
Wonderful. Oh, this
I'm thrilled to be here.
So Heather, you are the president of CRES Energy. Tell us about CRES Energy.
So CRES Energy was founded about 10 years ago. I've been running it for 8 years. And the idea is that, we've had one side of the aisle, Democrats working for climate change and addressing it for so long. And the thinking was, could we get Republicans to care about climate change in some way? And I'm 8 years in, and I can tell you, I'm seeing a lot of difference. And I'm a Republican, lifelong Republican, and I'm choosing to reform from within. It is hard work, but we're seeing some great progress. So we are, our climate's gotten really partisan, unfortunately, and we all benefit from having a clean environment. I think I said before, it's not a red or a blue issue, it's a red, white, and blue issue. And so how do we make those bridges? So I'm really a bridge builder at the end of the day, and one of the reasons why I wanted to participate, of course with you, Michelle, but also at San Francisco Climate Week, is just to explain what's going on in Washington. I've got a really good finger on the pulse about what's happening. There's a lot of concern about elections, what will happen. There's massive funding coming out of Washington, going out into states all across the country. We're incredibly competitive in green tech and clean energy. It's an exciting time. We want that to continue, so I hope to be part of that solution to keep it to continue. But we're working with helping Republicans learn more about the impacts of climate, and also what are the economic benefits from clean tech, how we can reduce our carbon footprint in a way that's responsible, but also not sacrificing our way of life too. There's a way we can have both. And when you talk to, as a messenger who's a Republican, talking to other Republicans, we're getting good receptivity. To the point now, there is actually a conservative climate caucus with 85 Republican members in the House of Representatives that I do a lot of work with these members. It's hard work, but I'm seeing change.
So on that note, I think everyone probably has elections on their mind.
Has everyone had their coffee already to be able to talk about elections?
So Heather, being a Republican, what do you think might happen if the House is adjourned?
Yeah, my prediction overall is that the House flips over to the Democrats, the Senate flips over to the Republicans, and the White House is anyone's toss right now. And so I think we have to be prepared for either scenario. Divided government has its challenges, but there also are opportunities in divided government as well, believe it or not. And I think we're going to see, there will be some kind of rollback with the IRA tax credits that have been really spurring a lot of great investment, making us globally competitive. And part of my day job right now is to talk about to members of Congress and their staff about the great benefits that IRA is bringing into red and blue districts all across the country. The investment is incredible, and if they don't know what's going on in their own backyards, they're not apt to support it. But it's all politics is local. We say that it's all local, but if you represent an area that has a lot of solar, you're probably going to like solar regardless of the letter next to your name. It's just the way it is. So, but you like solar and you like wind. How do I get you guys to work together and kind of pollinate those pieces? There's not a lot of us who are doing this work, so we always need partners, and we always need friends, and we always need storytelling. So one of the reasons of wanting to be here is I would love to tell your story about how you're making investments in communities and companies and others so that we can bring those. There's a lot of members of Congress to educate and let them know that this is working in a way. So that's really one of the reasons why I'm here.
So Heather, we have a room full of women who care a lot about climate, and is there a way that we can support your work and help you? Like, what can we do? How can we get involved?
Yeah, for sure. Well, by the way, on LinkedIn and being connected I'm also not nearly as great at LinkedIn as you are, Michelle, but I love LinkedIn and connecting. So I'd love to connect. I'm going to stay, of course, the whole time, and I'd love to be able to meet any of you who have an interest in talking, want to understand a little bit more about what's going on in Washington or get plugged in. I'm a resource. My colleague, Liz Daniels, is also here. And we are a female-led organization, mostly female people on my team. So Women in Climate is it fits us. It fits us well, and I think women have, a message that's, it's practical. We wear so many hats, and for me, I'm a mom, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, but when I'm not doing my day job, I'm a mom. Right, and so thinking about the next generation is really important. I have a 15-year-old daughter, and she says, "Mom, you're trying to make the world a better place." I'm trying, I'm trying. But I think that's really important in showing the next generation that this generation cares. So I'm proud of the work that I'm doing.
I'm proud of the work that you do as well. So what is it like on the Hill? You're in DC every day. We kind of hear about, come to the Hill. Like, what does that even mean? What does your work look like?
Yeah. So sometimes it was meeting with members of Congress, or it's meeting with staff and just giving them facts and information, usually about what's going on in their districts, or if there's some kind of policy that they're interested in that office. There's opposition, why there may be opposition. So the impollinator very much is a great scenario. Hopping around, there's a House side, a Senate side. You can walk them, but you've got to wear sensible shoes. It's a lot of back and forth, hard marble floors, confusing office building numbers, and trying to get from place to place. There's a lot of education that's going on the Hill constantly, and you're also, it's not just climate and environment and energy. Everyone is trying to get their attention, that member's attention. Everyone. So you're in competition for that attention. So being a reliable partner, showing up with them, working with them, creating the relationships with staff, nurturing them, the care and feeding of those relationships is really important. Being honest with them is really important, because you don't want to ruin a relationship. And these people are constantly changing. They're ambitious people, the staff members. They want to get promoted. They want to go to the next committee, or the next someone who could be the next whoever, president or whatever. And there's a lot of ambitious people, so you have to track these people. So your networks are huge. First thing is, what is your name? Second thing is, what do you do? Who do you work for? And you need that. Like, oh my gosh, it's not very. It's just the way it is. And you just need to know who you're dealing with. It can be a little bit of a rat race, and you learn how to navigate it. But I think one of the most important lessons I've learned over the years is be consistent. Tell the truth, be consistent, be exactly who you say you're going to be. And if you're that way today and tomorrow and the next day, you're not going to be a chameleon, be this type of person one day and the next. I think your word is really, really important. And you can easily get iced out if you don't really stand up and be a solid person, a trustworthy person. So it can be a little challenging, but there also is, when you're talking to a member of Congress who's like, hey, like Congressman John Curtis of Utah came up to me after I spoke at an event. He goes, "You're saying exactly what I think." I'm like, okay, who are you? He's like, "I'm from Utah," and I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna be a Republican, so let's go Utah. Tell me more. He goes, "I believe that the climate is changing, and I believe Republicans need to be more engaged on this issue." I'm like, you are my target audience. Where have you been? And how many friends do you have? So he and I started working together, and he called me up and said, "I want to create a caucus." I'm like, "Sir, a caucus is hard work." And he's like, "Will you help me?" He said, "If you get all these people to agree in leadership, I will do it." And if you're talking to a member of Congress who's now going to stick their neck out on climate, And there's 85 members in that caucus now. And it's an educational caucus. These members don't even know what they don't know. But taking them to COP, for instance, taking them to go see a solar array, a wind turbine factory, understanding how important shipping and critical minerals is, and explaining that to them, either bringing them to something or bringing information to them, is what every day looks like.
I was going to ask you for a story of positivity and hope, but I think you
Good.
that.
Well, I'll add that with COP, this is interesting. So the climate conference that it's going to be in Azerbaijan this year, we have brought over 3 delegations for the last 3 years. We'll bear forth. And the first year we brought members, we had like 4 members, and they were kind of like sitting on the sidelines. Like, okay, we're going to watch, we're going to be here. The second time, they're like, okay, we want to be on the stage. We have something to say. So the U.S. Pavilion, the State Department gave us space. Last year also we had space. I moderated a panel, all Republican panel, and I asked the question, and it wasn't on the list of questions I was supposed to ask, but I was like, do you think Republicans should be here every year? Do you feel like as a member of Congress you should be here? And all 3 of those who I was interviewing agreed, we need to be at COP every year. This is the international discussion about climate, and we need to be here. And I thought, I think we've just crossed another bridge, wanting to be here. So I came back to Washington. It was a kickoff of the second part of Congress. All these members of Congress showed up, and a number of them, who I didn't really know very well, said, are you Heather? I want to go to COP. I understand this is an opportunity for me to learn, and I need to be there. Like, yes, and may I get your name, sir? So I'm getting a lot of like interest, and I don't these members of Congress travel all the time, so it isn't like they're looking for another trip. But they have heard from their colleagues, they can learn a lot on this trip, and feel like it's a place where they can also make a difference. So, okay, how about that positivity?
Yes. What a great way to end the conversation. Let's give a round of applause for Heather.
Wonderful. Thank you, Heather, and thank you for being one of our change leaders on the Hill. Next up, we have Alyah Kanso. Alyah is the Sustainability Manager with our Golden State Warriors. Alyah.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again. Nice to see you. All right, so Alyah, you work for the Golden State Warriors. Do we have any Warriors fans in the room? Nice. Said this yesterday, but next year. I'm a Warriors fan as well. So you work for Warriors. You're working on the sustainability and leadership side. Tell us, how did you get involved in climate justice and climate equity?
Sure. So my journey into climate justice really started in school. I went to school in Baltimore, Maryland, and at the time there were a lot of racial justice and social justice movements that are happening. At the same time, I took a class called the Philosophy of Gender and Nature. And in this class, we learned about the intersections between social and environmental justice, the way that gender played a role. We learned about the Rana Plaza disaster that happened in 2013, which was an avoidable disaster and collapse that happened at a clothing factory in Bangladesh, and most of the folks that were injured and or killed were actually women. And so a lot of the issues that were brought to light in this class and the issues that were happening in Baltimore at the time really made it clear to me that the link between social and environmental justice were inextricably linked, right? You can't have climate justice without racial justice. You can't have climate justice without queer liberation, without gender equity, without closing the income inequality gap. These things are inextricably linked, and it made it impossible to go back. So I think about it in my work a lot. One example in terms of how climate tech might play a role is for anyone who was at the Rubi summit yesterday, you might have heard my colleague Jackie talk about this, but we have a compost biodigester, and essentially this compost biodigester is allowing us to process all of our organic material on site. So instead of having a waste hauler come, take all our compost and ship it, truck it 70 miles away, we are processing it on site. And there were a lot of options for what we could do with what came out of it. We could bag it and sell it, which is something that a lot of folks proposed to us. You can have a new revenue stream, you should bag it, put put Steph's name on it. And I want to make it popcorn. We didn't do that. And part of the reason we didn't do that was because what benefit did that bring to the community? How was it any different than us having a college to haul it away? Who's really profiting off of that opportunity? So instead, we decided to look for opportunities that would actually benefit the community. How do we take the compost that we're making and support sidewalk gardens in the city, replanting projects for urban forestation for folks that are lacking tree equity? That was one way that I tried to embed the climate justice lens that I come from into the work that I do, and it's something that I think about every single day.
You have a really deep relationship, and I see on social media, on LinkedIn, that you bring it up often, so thank you for raising awareness. Our theme today is around clean tech, and I'm curious to get your thoughts around the clean tech and climate equity piece. What are some of the challenges you see?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think there are a couple things that come up for me. One is intentionality. The intentionality behind who is funding climate and clean tech solutions, the intentionality behind the policymakers who are trying to put these things in place. What is the intention behind the work that they're trying to do? Is it to continue to line the pockets of the few and instead of supporting the many? Is it to extend the life of the fossil fuel industry as opposed to a rapid reduction of fossil fuels? What is the intention behind it? So I think about that a lot, and I think it's a challenge within clean tech because I think it has been used by some fossil fuel companies to avoid trying to reduce fossil fuels. I also think about this idea of clean tech and what the definition of clean tech means. Is it really clean tech if it's displacing the community? Is it really clean tech if it's not affordable and if most people can't access it? I think that the question of clean tech and the definition, I think, needs to be expanded beyond just maybe the renewable energy that's being used to make it, and really include the folks that are being impacted by these projects as well.
So I heard intention, that's definitely really important, and even things like displacing communities, right? We don't really think about that, but we need to really dig deeper and look beyond the layers and get into it. So you highlighted some challenges. What are some opportunities that you see when it comes to clean tech and clean equity?
I think we have a huge opportunity to redefine what clean tech really means, to redefine it in a way that includes overburdened and underserved communities. How do we include indigenous knowledge in clean tech? How do we include concepts like biomimicry into clean tech? So examples, which is maybe not a big one, is a dam, right? That is a kind of like biomimicry. Beavers have been doing this forever. And beavers did it really, really well in that it wasn't just to serve themselves, but it really created an entire ecosystem that allowed other living things to live there. So how do we start to reframe clean tech to make sure that it's not just the processes in place are clean, but also the entire holistic view around the technology is really wholesome. And how do we start to invest? We're in San Francisco, it's a huge innovation hub. There's so much amazing work happening here. And I think it's really easy to want to put on a pedestal this shiny new potential technology, but I think there are so many existing solutions that need tech, that need our help. A lot of community-based solutions, a lot of grassroots solutions that need technology to really take it to the next level. So how do we start to move the needle and move some of the investments to, instead of this technology that maybe hasn't been proven, or maybe that doesn't have the same co-benefits, and push it towards something that really does, that is really here to serve the masses and not the few.
Leah, what are some of the resources, accounts that people in the room can follow to learn more?
So there are a few people that I learn a lot from. One is Yami Flores, and they are an indigenous leader. I just heard them speak recently, and they also started something called the Kinray Hub, which is a research and development hub that tries to weave indigenous, local, and descendant knowledge with Western knowledge to bring together a number of stakeholders to make sure that our future also includes the traditional knowledge that has come from our past. Climate Justice Alliance is another one. They work on this concept of the just transition, which is really a theory, but it is also a practice and a process to not only recognize the harm that has been done, but also actively works to address that in the just transition towards a clean and fossil-free future for everyone. And the last one that I will shout out is Intersectional Environmentalists. They are an incredible group. They're actually throwing a few events here during SF Climate Week, and they do an incredible job of lifting up overburdened and underserved voices. They really call to the front some of the racial and social justice movements that are connected and really try to highlight the work that's happening grassroots. So I highly recommend checking out a number of those people. Yahweh's on LinkedIn, you can find them there. Kid Makeup, I think, is also on LinkedIn, but I'm also on LinkedIn, and if you want to learn more, I'm happy to talk to you more about some of the things that I'm learning as well.
Let's close, Alyah, with your Open Doors initiative. I see that on LinkedIn all the time.
Sure. Yeah, so I started something called Open Door Climate Office Hours a couple months ago, and my job is pretty unique. So I have a lot of students who reach out to me about wanting to work in sports and sustainability. They're an athlete who has had to stop their soccer games because there's been a heat wave and they can't keep playing. So I, instead of trying to give every single person who reaches out an hour of my time, I started to do Open Door Climate Office Hours, which was started by Daniel Hill, and essentially every other Friday, this Friday will be in person, but every other Friday there's normally a virtual room where folks can come, and it's a beautiful community space. I've had 17 people at one point from all over the world, Hungary and Slovenia and Peru, come who are interested in working at some intersection of sustainability, not necessarily just in sports. I've worked in plenty of other industries before, but that tends to be a really exciting one for people. So if you are interested in that, please find me on LinkedIn. That's usually where I post my sessions. Like I said, there's one this Friday. It will be in person in the city. That one is on Luma if you're interested in that one as well.
Thank you, Alyah, for bringing all these really important topics to our audience today, especially in relation to clean tech. And yeah, one of these things I'm going to join your Open Door as well.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Next up, we have our startup panel. I'd like to welcome Serena, Poon, Neeka, Mashouf, and Melia up to our stage. Serena is our SVP of Silicon Valley Bank. Neeka is the founder of Rubi Laboratories. And Jane is the founder of Harvest Thermal. Thank you.
So, first of all, welcome to our beautiful SVB Experience Center. I hope you're enjoying the beautiful, I always love how the weather comes. So I am honored to have two clients here today, and talk about this.
You sound great. You're great.
Okay, it's too bad. As mentioned earlier, my name is Serena. I'm a relationship manager for our climate tech and sustainability team at SVB. We have had this practice for over almost 20 years now, so we've been partnering with the climate tech community for a long time now. So I wanted to introduce my founders here. We have Jane, who is the CEO and co-founder of Harvest, which delivers grid flexible heating, hot water, and cooling systems that help homes transition away from gas and comfortably, safely, affordably, and scale. Right? And then we also have Neeka, and so Neeka is the co-founder and CEO of Rubi Laboratories. And Rubi Laboratories is leading the way in decarbonizing and in the capture and convert CO2 into cellulose, for use in textiles, which I like to say, converting dirty air to something I can wear. It rhymes too. Anyway, so I want to hear about your founder stories. If you could share, can you share with us what you've been doing before, and we'll get to your
Okay, I'll start. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. So I am a bit of a geek. I'm a civil engineer, I have a PhD in physics, so I started off life on the engineering side, but I transitioned relatively quickly to the business side. By the way, I'm also a mom of 3 adult children, empty nester, and I love the math, so I can handle it. But I run the business side, actually in Europe. You can tell I've got a European accent, working with HP, shout out to HP, and that brought me over to the Bay Area 20 years ago. What was happening here 20 years ago? It was the first climate tech revolution. A lot of work being done on solar and on wind, and so I jumped ship. I couldn't help myself, and I joined the startup back in 2008, a company called Soul Focus, and I've been in the startup world ever since. Never looked back. I absolutely love it. How do you bring impact for innovation to market and really, play a part in the growth of the company? So, been in 4 other startups before founding Harvest. 3 of them were in clean tech, solar cells, energy storage. One of them was in quantum tech, which is another story. Maybe we have a coffee later on. Before founding Harvest in 2019. And I founded Harvest based on a personal problem. I've been working in climate tech for a while, and I had an old gas furnace which was about to die. And I thought, well, I've got to replace it with a heat pump because methane gas is not good for the planet. It's not scalable. I better put in a heat pump. Heat pumps are electric systems. They're moving heat rather than generating. They're so much more efficient. That is the solution for building decarbonization. And then I started looking into it, and I had a problem. I need to heat my home at night and in the morning. There's no solar electricity at night and in the morning. And so what I'm doing is I'm removing the gas from my home and creating another challenge, which is we're adding load to the grid at times when it doesn't have capacity. Ultimately, you can imagine that that is adding the need for more gas heat plants, adding the need for more capacity. And while I thoroughly support heat pumps, I think there has to be a better way. So we solved the problem for my home back in 2018. I installed it, and it worked so well, I thought, wow, I need to bring this to market. And that's what we founded Harvest.
If I had that problem, I would be like, oh, well, there's something I can do about it.
This was great hearing about your journey too. I'm Neeka, very nice to meet everyone. I grew up in the Bay Area, and my founder story almost feels like a lifetime in the making. I grew up really interested in nature and science, and using science to understand nature and apply it to our most important industry systems. That actually started when I was 15 years old. Here in the Bay Area, I published my first paper in artificial photosynthesis at a national lab over in Berkeley, the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And that really came from, shout out to the PIs, the professors who were willing to take on a high school student in their lab. But that was this initial spark for me of being able to learn from nature and apply it to energy, manufacturing, and other technologies. So I continued working across frontier research in the sustainability space over 12 years since then, through high school, through college. I went to UC Berkeley, and I studied materials engineering and business. And I wanted to study materials engineering because I was inspired by how throughout human history, our eras and the generations of technology were really defined by unlocks in materials and manufacturing. So you think of the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, Iron Age, Silicon Age, Steel Age before that, and then looking forward into what the next age could be. To me, it was really inspiring because it was always around materials and how we could unlock new possibilities using science. And what that really inspired in me after college and really continuing my focus and passion in the climate space was when I look at what the next era of manufacturing needs to be, I think of the symbiotic age. And a lot of it comes from natural systems and biomimicry, and for us to hit our climate goals that we've set as a society and also to thrive humans with the planet, we actually need manufacturing systems that can be symbiotic with the planet. So human prosperity and ecological prosperity can be aligned together. I think one of the best ways we can do that is by learning from natural systems. And that's what we're aiming to do with our technology at Rubi Labs. This all started in 2021. Me and my twin sister started developing the technology behind Rubi. She also has a really deep technical background in bioengineering. We were able to get a public biohacker cafe, we got just a lab bench there, and one summer we were able to prototype the technology behind Rubi. And what we do is we focus on capturing CO2, or basically being able to utilize waste carbon and turn it into new useful materials in an ultra low carbon, zero water, zero land process. And that can come from direct air CO2, it can come from waste sugars, from food waste or landfill. It can also come from CO2 emissions from flue gas stacks at manufacturing facilities. And we turn that material into cellulose today for use in textiles and fabrics with apparel brands. But it's really a platform for being able to apply it to a wide variety of our most important materials that today we get through very resource intensive manufacturing processes. So yeah, it really, it's always been my passion, and it's exciting to be able to leverage that passion today, and recognizing that so many people helped us get here, and the resources here in the Bay Area helped us be able to design and develop this technology to where we are now, a seed stage company, 20 people, working on scaling this up with industry partners.
I have to do a little side note. I helped open up Neeka's account when I was in the startup banking team, and we had in the startup banking team we have like a bunch of different verticals that we serve, and clean tech was one of them. And I remember Neeka's account when we opened her company was like one of the first clean tech companies that I opened, and I was just floored. I'm like, wait, what do you do? How do you do this? And first of all, both of you all are so brilliant. Like it's amazing what you all can do. But when she was telling me, I was like, you're making magic? Is that what this is? How do you do this? And it just really opened the door to like just my passion, both of your passion for clean tech is just it is infectious. And so it made me just really like, what is this space? Love it. How can I help? And how can we be part of this? So thank you for your passion. And I want to also just, let's talk about a little bit about policy and how policy affects your companies. And if you can go a little bit into just how does policy affect the demand for your company, specifically what you do, and how does that accelerate, or maybe did it accelerate business for you?
Absolutely. We see it as one of the major accelerants for our company, and I think when you look over the last 5 to 7 years, especially after the Paris Climate Accords, and consumers started becoming a lot more aware of the carbon footprint of the products that they're using in industries and where we needed to get to as a planet to sort of have a chance of multi-generations from now sort of thriving. I think that really kicked off the movement, especially in the fashion space. And that's incredible, and you see fashion brands really responding to that because they see it as not only their responsibility, but also a business opportunity to be able to move their business where consumers are pushing them. And that means more business and revenue and all that stuff for them. I think that's, that was an initial push for the fashion industry specifically. But I think also since then, and after several really tragic disasters in the fashion industry, there's been a lot more legislation and policy around in the fashion industry, the way things are made, also carbon footprint and sustainability attributes, and I think it's incredibly exciting. And you see brands that we talk to, who we have pilots with, major brands, they cite these legislations, policies of the reason why they are investing in new products. They have to change so much about their business, and it's not easy. And so having regulations support that is really critical, because there needs to be a compelling reason across the full leadership team of a brand to be able to make such significant changes as changing their entire supply chain. And it's sad. We all wish that we could change more easily the supply chains and manufacturing methods of brands and just industries in general. But the way it is, like the way that these brands think today, there needs to be a really solid business case. US or countries in Europe can adopt and be able to shift fashion brands to adopt these decarbonized solutions. So it's not just the countries where manufacturing happens. We have a lot of power to be able to set policy that can encourage brands to adopt solutions like ours, and not have all of the cost burden just on the brand or on the startup. I think having policy that helps support these changes is really important.
So I'd say one of the silver linings around the fight against climate change is the community that it's building. There's so many of us all growing in the same direction, and that goes from the policymakers, from the utilities, from the grid operators, from the solar panel manufacturers, from the individuals, and then tech startups such as ourselves. But if you're thinking about that ship analogy, the policymaker is the rudder. If policy is pointing in the wrong direction, it's really, really hard to make progress. And that's really challenging, particularly as a startup. For example, Harvest were doing something new. We're taking 2/3 of the energy use of homes. We're transforming or combining heat pump with thermal storage, which means we can reduce those emissions by 90% and save bills by 30%. So that really opens the door to scale. But the policymakers, they're human beings. They have to grapple with what they think is possible, and they don't know what is coming. By definition, startups are doing what is coming. And so it is our job to make sure that those policymakers are aware of it and they can steer that direction. For example, somebody was asking, how come France has 80% of nuclear energy? Whether you like or not nuclear energy, that is a fact. They have 80% nuclear energy. That's because they have 0% interest on nuclear investment. Why are contractors in the Bay Area now encouraging people to use heat pumps? Well, because in 2027, you will not be able to install a furnace. So the industry is transitioning and they're encouraging that change. So policymakers are really what sets the foundation of change. Now, as a startup, you've got to make sure you're not written out of the legislature. You've got to make sure you're not forgotten because people don't know you exist, and yet you're in the future. What that means is, it's really challenging because you're a small company. You're always understaffed, you're always underworked, you never have enough money. But you have to be there. You have to know what's going on. And not just know what's going on, you've got to be at the table and in the conversation. That means 2 years before a law comes into practice, you have to be making comments. You have to be shaking hands, you have to be saying, I know this is where the technology is now, but this technology is also working and is actually growing, and this actually solves some problems. And that means that, you're starting off, you start off as a team, we're also 20 people today, but we started off with 2, then 5, then 6, then 9. Not many people, and everybody's wearing many hats. That means that I was fortunate enough that my head of product and co-founder happened to lead building decarbonization at NRDC. So he's really embedded and knowledgeable about policy. So that was his third job. And then he did, I don't know when, nights and weekends, so making sure he was on top of it. So we were commenting, we were communicating, we were making sure that our customers and our contractors have a product with the right certifications, the right standards, it's in the right list, so that they can capture the incentives they deserve. So it's about structuring the company so that you can work with the other players who are driving the policy.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's just the extra facet that you have to, I don't want to say deal with, but that is part of the factors into being a startup. It's just much more complicated than another AI startup. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you all enjoyed hearing from our amazing founders. And I just want to do a quick plug. I'm also a co-founder of a startup called Prism. It's a career founder network. So if you find yourself as a career founder, please reach out to me.
What an inspiring think tank panel. Thank you also, Serena, for bringing these amazing founders and Jane and Neeka for us. Next up, we are having our capital and funding panel. There we go, perfect.
I was like, I'm not going up.
Yeah, I know. I was like, maybe I messed this up. I'd like to welcome Sarabeth, Brockley, Senior Director of CarbonBetter, and Katie Hoffman, Partner with Regeneration.VC. Thank you. Good morning.
It's really lovely to see everyone. I hope you're all having a washing machine of the week at Climate Week, second iteration at San Francisco. It's really fantastic to see this because usually we're bopping around New York City Climate Week and UNGA overlay cryptocurrency conferences. This is a much better ecosystem to be in, so it's really nice to have people understand that. I think what we're really interested in discussing is some of these pieces that if you've worked in capital markets or if you've started or thought about moving into the venture capital space yourself, there's a lot of rules of the road and usually not a lot of women as partners in those spaces. Typically in the United States, about 11% of LPs or even like formal partners in venture capital funds are women. That's sad because that means there's a large portion of people that aren't getting access to liquidity or opportunity. But I'm joined today by Hoffman, who is a partner at Regeneration.VC, which if you haven't heard about it, I guarantee that if you go look it up, it is a little bit more than what you think it might be about. The one piece when Katie and I got to discuss, I think when we met like a year and a half ago, washing machine, is the investment thesis that goes into why you start working for a company. So Katie has a long career spanning the policy space. She's done one of the first ETFs in climate index investing in California. Why are you now a partner at Regeneration? What does Regeneration speak to?
Yes, thank you, Sarabeth, and thank you to Women in Climate for hosting me and this incredible speaker series. It's been very inspiring, and also thanks again to SVB for hosting us in this lovely circular building, which brings me to a point about why I started doing work with Regeneration. But I'll back up first into the fact that I didn't have a natural path into becoming an investor. I always thought I would be a human rights lawyer, like my father, and my mother was a corporate attorney at Sony Pictures, so law was the pathway. And then I studied climate science at Cal, and I really went down that understanding and realized that we had a few levers to pull if we were going to reach scale. And when I saw the statistics about shifting, 5 to 7 trillion per annum to meet the Sustainable Development Goals, I was like, we got to do that across every asset class. I'm going to learn all of this, and I'm going to learn by doing. But in order to do that, I really did go through the policy route first. So I helped pass a policy for the state of California back in 2015 before Paris that mandated CalPERS and CalSTRS to look at their portfolio and take into account climate science, and particularly their holdings in fossil fuels, and start formulating more fiduciary obligations around asset classes as it relates to climate science. So this was before ESG was really a term, but we really wanted to propel large institutions managing public funds to take that into account and hopefully start shifting the marketplace. That was part of an international coalition that was working with all types of investors, family offices, individuals, pension funds, and sovereigns, called Divest Invest, and now has about 40.4 trillion in assets under management that have committed to some form of investment in climate and also divestiture from the industries harming the climate that we know about based on IPCC. So that's just one big piece. So then I went out and I tried to work in just about every single asset class and bring climate science and my knowledge about both policy, the science, and what needed to be done into real estate growth. We built a low carbon ETF that was one of the first to launch on the New York Stock Exchange. The New York Stock Exchange.
It's okay, I forgive you. Sorry, I worked for NASDAQ for a long time. I have carbon policy. We joke about this a lot, so it's fine.
And so upon doing that, I realized that there's a huge need to continue to support founders such as the ones we just heard from, and venture capital really is this incredibly powerful vehicle. It represents, I think, between 1% and 3% of global GDP. Yet if you look at the Fortune 500 companies, about 70 to 80% have all been backed by venture capital. So those types of statistics really brought me in, and I met my partners and we formed actually during COVID, which is a really interesting time to raise a first-time fund, even though we all had invested together and had track record as individuals. And we decided upon doing a lot of the research about where climate tech investing was happening, right, and where there were white spaces. We were inspired by a report by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which suggested that 55% of global emissions, we're seeing if you want to invest to address that, it's in mobility, transportation, infrastructure, super important. But there is a white space in that 45%, which is the stuff we make on a day-to-day basis, household consumption, and the supply chain that produces those materials. So you said things very eloquently, so we don't need to reiterate how important material flows are, and how oftentimes consumer markets, those of us who are actually using those materials on a day-to-day basis, have not been included in the conversation. So that being said, we looked at the data and it was pretty startling, and less than 8% of materials currently made into stuff and in circulation are actually going back into circulation. So we are talking about an enormous amount of waste in what we call the linear economy. And Regeneration.VC set out to really address what a circular economy could look like. So how do we design novel inputs and materials and the advanced manufacturing that can enable them to go into circulation? How do we use those materials and actually put them into the supply chains and the brands that can demonstrate and integrate those materials? And then how do we reuse materials, right? Reverse logistics, the ability to actually trace and recycle material flows and create end markets for those materials. And I can give examples of companies, but I think that's kind of the gist of why we started the fund and why we started investing in early stage founders.
Yeah, usually when I meet new women working in the funding space, I do one of two things. I first look at a pitch book and I see what does the profile look like. And if you've ever opened a pitch book, you know that the idea is it's not usually very evocative of what the female founder is or maybe what the fund is doing, but then I always go to the news sections, and the thing that blew me away about Regeneration.VC is that we have already had leads first, new funding round, $45 million raise 2022, 38 dry powder. And I was like, okay, cool, let's go dive in a little bit more. What do they do? Great. Reduce, reuse, recycle? Not so much. What I think a lot of the investment thesis that Keely's getting towards is that the spaces that are atypical in the funding area is something that's nearer to you as a impact-driven investor, right? So the optics that you're putting over a portfolio that might align a little bit more with ESG methodology that is impact focused first, then fiduciary management first, and then impact focused, then BMAS. I'm really interested in some of the companies that you found were the highlights of that idea for a circular economy.
Absolutely. So I actually run all of our impact methodology, bringing the scientific background in, and we've looked at over 150 different frameworks, and really always try to level up to both climate and biodiversity as kind of the gold standards, the targets that we've set internationally, and also how we can integrate those interlocking systems, nature, and kind of the man-made challenges that we have in the Anthropocene with emissions in particular. So that being said, I can give an example of companies from the design, use, and reuse perspective, just because that's a framing that we like to use. And also, before I do that, Leonardo DiCaprio is amazing. He is an investor. I actually would like to just shout out, I know that his celebrity is something that people see, but he's actually quite a sophisticated investor, and his family office are just a joy to work with, and they've followed on to a lot of our investments, so they're quite active, and they really do want to propel this space forward beyond just his celebrity. And yeah, well, my partners are from LA, so they brought that in, and I brought the kind of Berkeley energy.
We're the rationalization opportunity.
Yeah, or just being the nerd that was like, what, Leo, is that important? They're like, it's important. Which it has been for some of our companies to amplify their message. Two examples. So design. Novel inputs and materials that can go in to displace perhaps toxic or noxious materials in circulation. So we've invested in a company called CRES. They synthesize through a waste stream of mostly shrimp, a biomaterial called chitosan, and that chitosan is then the active ingredient for making a polystyrene replacement that's fully home compostable, actually, within 60 days, and they have all their certifications for that. They've just scaled up with Atlantic Packaging, and they're really moving into the packaging industry in a big way, and we love to see that, surfers from Santa Cruz were really not happy with the foaming agents and everything going into it, so they went into a lab and figured out how to make an alternative, and they get paid to take those waste streams. So this is something that we see as circular in a big way on the design side. Use, we invested in a company called Tulu, and it's interesting because it's kind of a simple concept, but it's so brilliant. So they basically make these vending machines, so to speak, and they for commercial and residential real estate, so large buildings, say in New York City, they're in 20 countries, and you can rent a vacuum cleaner, printer. So consumer durables that otherwise would maybe be thrown away are actually now staying in use within the building, and through partnerships with Bosch and others of the like, they're actually, those suppliers are starting to design for better use and reuse of those materials within the Tulu systems. So the last one I'll say is reuse. So we invested in a company called Great Parrot. They use a high frequency optic system, which is really easy to install at the MRF level or material recycling facility level. And it can take, they've taken 60 billion photos, and they have an artificial intelligence overlay that enables them to identify up to 60 different types of materials that are going through the conveyor belt, and then give that information in real time to the MRF facility so they can sort and or make better use for end market development. They just partnered with Dutch company Bolograph, which owns Van Dyke, which is in the US, owns about 60% of the MRF market, your waste management, et cetera, and they're starting to get their systems in at that level. So we're starting to see this type of scale that can really help the reuse side of the equation.
And as we're wrapping up, it's probably one of the most important buttons to end on, is that while Regeneration.VC also has a US focus, it's primarily also driven by international pieces and probably influences of the EU landscape. Katie's talked to you about the funding napkin, which is remarkable. You can talk to her a little bit more about her recent raise and the fund that she's working to. It's a hell of a lot more than 45 mil. And if you have an idea that fits within that piece, I'd encourage you to come up with something to her afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarabeth and Katie. Such a great panel, and it personally resonates with me as well. I joined Women's Equity Lab as an early stage angel to help get more women on cap tables, so it can help fund amazing founders like Neeka and Jane. Next up, for our federal government panel, I'd like to welcome back to the stage Michelle Lee, founder of Women in Climate, and Dr. Vanessa Chan, who's the Chief Commercialization Officer at DOE.
Right? And this is not your first kind of hurrah with us. You joined us in New York as well.
Look at my pen.
I got my pen on.
We'll see how it is.
Vanessa, you've had a really busy week so far. How many events have you been to? 16.
Today. Yeah, this morning.
You also spoke at 12 events.
I don't know, something like that. We did the keynote, and then I'm leaving this event to go back to another event that I just left to go somewhere. So it's crazy. It's good.
We are so lucky and honored to have you here to join our Women in Climate community. This is a really special conversation. So I'm going to catch you up a little bit on the conversations we've had so far today. We started the day, we talked to Heather around DC and Republican policymaking. We had startups, some clean tech founders. We had a conversation with Alyah from the Golden State Warriors on climate equity, and we just had a conversation on funding. So lots of dialogue around the different aspects of clean tech. And so now we're capping it off with the federal government. Can you tell us, what is the Department of Energy? What do you guys do?
Well, first of all, I want to say we are not like your average department, meaning we are not bureaucratic. What? No, I really mean that. We are moving fast, we are moving furiously, and we're moving very deliberately. And really what we're trying to do here at the Department of Energy is figure out ways that we can actually drive the clean energy transition. And it's really important because in order to do this, we need to do it together. And so really our theme is around a private sector-led but government-enabled clean energy transition. And that is really, really critical. And so really what we're doing here at DOE is figuring out ways that we can use the money that we got from Uncle Bill and Auntie Ira and petroleum dollars towards the clean energy transition and figure out a way to activate, which by some estimates is a 23 to 175 trillion that the private sector has. So a trillion is a big number, but it pales in comparison to what the rest of the ecosystem has to do. So really what we're trying to do is figure out how to use that 1 trillion in the most effective way to catalyze the private sector to act as quickly as possible. And we have a lot of tools at our disposal to do it, and we also have 17 amazing national labs, 3 of which are in the Bay Area. You guys actually have the highest concentration of our national labs. And they are doing amazing technology there that will also enable a clean energy transition. So I will tell you, I'm a kid in the candy store. I love my job. It's super fun. And you know me well enough to know that if I was in a bureaucratic organization, I would run away really, really fast. And so we hope you guys move as fast as we are.
You were telling this story the other day around how you actually got into the DOE. Can you actually recap that a little bit? Because I thought it was a great story.
Yeah, so I think this is a good story because what you should get in terms of the take home from the story is always say yes, even if it's a partial yes. And so the federal government was not in my vision board. In fact, I think it was in this card pile for my magazine clippings on my vision board. And so what happened was I was a professor at Kanso. I've had an eclectic career, went from PhD to McKinsey partner to selling my stuff on QVC to be an angel investor, and then maybe was a Penn professor. And I got a phone call from a former client who was like, hey, Department of Energy is like thinking a lot about commercialization, and I told them there's one person you have to talk to, which is Vanessa. She really knows us up cold. And I was like, okay, so I took a phone call, this is in 2017, and they're like, hey, will you come to a workshop in DC to talk about commercialization? I was like, kind of. I've got 2 young kids, my husband travels, and so it's kind of hard, so I'll come late and leave early, but I will come for a part of it. And as you can tell, I'm not a wallflower, so I shared my views on commercialization and didn't think anything of it. And then in 2020, November, I get this weird email saying the Biden-Harris administration is interested in you. And I was like, oh, that's funny. And then I get another email saying, no, really, upload your resume here. And so this is in the pandemic, right? So I upload my resume, and you get this cryptic thing saying, in the next 2 weeks, when are you available? And it's a little like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. You send availability, and they say, great, here are 3 time slots, please turn up. They don't tell you who you're meeting with, whatever. And so I turn up, and the first one's like, we are considering you to the Chief Commercialization Officer. Meanwhile, I'm Google saying, what is DOE doing? No idea what you guys are doing. And then I was like, where did you guys find me? Because this is like 3 years later. And I found out that one workshop I went to for a few hours led to my name being thrown into a hat 3 years later to be the Chief Commercialization Officer. So if I had not said that partial yes, I would not be here today. So for any of you, and I know that we all have like busy personal lives, always do that partial yes, because you have no idea where it's going to take you. And had I not said yes, you wouldn't even know who I was. So it's amazing. So say that partial yes.
Always say yes.
Always say yes.
So we hear about IRA a lot. Policy has also been talked about on the various different panels. What's the latest with the IRA? Are there new policies coming along as well to spur funding?
Yeah, so IRA bill and others have led to $1 trillion of investment into the clean energy transition. And I think the key here is that we're trying really hard to get the money out as thoughtfully as possible. So there are different levers that we have, which are things like tax credits that we have. For example, 45B, which is a production tax credit for hydrogen. 48C, which is really trying to spur manufacturing in the U.S. And then we also have like loan programs which have favorable terms. We also have programs that directly fund startups and other ecosystems. We have things like the hydrogen hubs, where we get $7 billion that we actually put against 7 hydrogen hubs. And then what was really exciting about this was it led to $40 billion of the private sector actually being ponied up. And so when I talk about this government-enabled, private sector-led, this is an example of how it works. But we're being really innovative here at Department of Energy to really be thoughtful around how do we drive commercialization. So anyone who's done commercialization knows that it is very hard because people like doing things the way they normally do it. And when you're trying to drive a new technology out the door, the supply chain will not be stood up until they know they have an offtake agreement, because they want to know they can sell whatever it is they're building. The offtake agreement is not going to buy anything until they know they've got a guaranteed supply supply chain, which is dual sourced. They don't want people beholden to one company, and they want to know that they can buy it for a certain amount of money. So what we did, we reserved $1 billion of the $8 billion that were given by Congress to actually drive the hydrogen hubs for a guaranteed offtake. So what that means is we were going to say on the backside, we know that the demand people want to be able to pay for it at a certain price. Right now the technology isn't quite there. So we have $1 billion to help with the offtake on the other side to decrease the risk so that the people who can buy hydrogen are not going to feel too scared to write those contracts. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing right now, which is super exciting.
Great. I mean, $1 million, that's a lot, and it's great that it's being built out as fast as possible.
In a thoughtful way to activate everybody here to do this.
Amazing. We did talk about climate equity, and I'm curious from the DOE's perspective when it comes to climate equity, climate justice, how is the DOE ensuring that there is a lens?
Yeah, so energy justice is so critical to this administration. One of the very first executive orders was around this. And for those of you who aren't sure what energy justice means, it's basically making sure that those who have been disproportionately affected by energy and don't benefit economically from a lot of the energy moves that have been made over the years are actually going to have those historical injustices rectified. And EJ40 is a term you may have heard, which is 40% of the impact of the work we're doing needs to be helping to support those communities that have been negatively impacted in the past. And this is being led by the Energy, Justice and Equity team within DOE, led by my very good friend, Shalonda Baker. And what we're trying to do is make sure that there's equitable programs throughout everything that Department of Energy is doing. And so we have extra incentives to actually make sure our programs are hitting those communities that have been negatively impacted. And so how are we actually doing that? For every program, they have to, and those who are submitting to DOE funding, they actually have to put together a community benefit plan as part of the bill, IRA, and loans that they are applying for. And what does that community benefit plan entail? It has 4 parts. First of all, there has to be a plan to actually engage the community and labor. Second, there has to be a plan to invest in the local workforce. Third is to ensure there's equity and inclusion through recruiting and training. And lastly, there has to be a plan to actually implement the Justice 40 initiatives. And just to be clear, those are all 4 very big asks, but you scope it appropriately. So if you're doing a hydrogen hub, the requirements for those 4 elements are very different than if you're a startup applying for funding. We also have the LEAP, which is a local energy action plan, where what we're trying to do is really help those communities that are going to be burdened when we move away from fossil fuel. Because there's a lot of communities that actually are dependent on fossil fuel for their jobs. And these communities get assistance from one of our national labs, the NREL, which is our lab located in Colorado, in order to help them figure out the plans that they can do to help with support the transition so the community is not left behind. And with this support, we ask that a coalition is built, where there's one local government partner, as well as one community-based organization, and them together with NREL figure out what a plan could be. And we're very excited that the community program just had their second cohort notice, where 30 communities received $18 million in technical assistance to help create those plans. And I'll just let you know that this Justice 40 initiative, which once again is very deliberate, is working. And how do we know it's working? Over 2 times the amount of money is being given to communities that have been impacted negatively by historical moves made on energy compared to the rest of the nation. Like 2 times more. So it is working, and we really are driving that EJ40 initiative. And so I think it's really important that all of you think about this because it's important we do this in a just way.
So that's the first time I've been hearing about these programs. There's LEAP, there's EJ40, so another few resources to look at when it comes to the climate equity piece. Vanessa, we are so lucky to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. Everyone, please give a I'm just going to wrap this up here today. Can everyone give Jen a round of applause? I also want to give a shout out
to all of our volunteers that were helping out with checkout, lots of Berkeley students here supporting us, so please, a round of applause for them. We have the space until around 10:30, so I encourage everyone to go meet 2 new people. Don't see the friends that you normally see. There's people from out of town here. Meet new people, network, join our speaker database. I will see you on Slack. Thank you so much.